Well, on your screens now you can see an image of a large set of towers. There are housing complex called Wang Fu Court in Taipo District, Hong Kong. On the left you can see this housing complex before a devastating fire that lasted more than a few hours. And on the right is the image of the housing complex after the buildings caught fire. And yes, you got that right. Multiple buildings were engulfed in this fire. Let's take a dive into the specifics as to what happened. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive brought to you by NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra, bringing you the details on a horrific fire in decades that has hit the district of Taipo in Hong Kong. Well, Hong Kong is known for its towering skyscrapers. Its urban landscape is made up of an impressive forest of steel and glass towers that dominate the sky. However, a fire broke out at Wang Fu Court, a large public housing complex in Taipo district at 2:51 p.m. local time on Wednesday. This fire took hold in an 8-building housing estate with the 2,000 apartments and is home to some 4,600 residents. The complex, which was built in 1983, is made up of 8 towers, each 31 stories high, with 7 initially affected by the fire. It is currently unclear how many people were in the towers while the fire took place, but 55 people are reportedly dead and hundreds still remain missing. The devastating fire, which continues to blaze, is now being considered the financial hub's worst in decades, sending shockwaves through the area, with even China's Xi Jinping expressing his condolences and calling for all-out efforts to minimize casualties and losses. At the time of the blaze, the buildings were undergoing renovation, with the outside being covered in bamboo scaffolding and construction netting. Visuals from the blaze show the fire spreading quickly through the bamboo. Soon after the fire broke out, visuals of the blaze went viral on social media, with local media even reporting that explosions could be heard inside the building. And according to Hong Kong's fire department, the blaze has been categorized as level 5, the highest in severity. In fact, 17 years since a level 5 fire last hit Hong Kong. Firefighters are still struggling to douse the flames as of today morning. They added that the scorching temperatures inside Wang Fu Court were preventing them from reaching the upper floors of the buildings, where residents are still trapped. The Deputy Director of the Hong Kong Fire Services Department has also stated that the temperatures inside the buildings concerned are very high, so it's quite difficult for them to enter the building and go upstairs and conduct firefighting and rescue operations. A total of 128 fire trucks, 57 ambulances and some 400 police officers have been deployed at the scene of the fire, where locals look aghast as the blaze continues to rip through the buildings. As of now, 55 people have died as a result of the blaze in the Hong Kong complex, with Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee confirming 279 people still missing. Among those who have died so far is firefighter Ho Wai Ho, 37, who was with the service at the Sha Tin fire station for 9 years. At least 2 others were injured while battling the flames. And according to officials, one has injured his leg while the other is battling extreme exhaustion. While the exact cause of the fire is yet to be determined, many note that the bamboo scaffolding may have exacerbated the effects of the blaze. Such scaffolding is a common sight in Hong Kong, as bamboo grows quickly and is lightweight and strong. It has been used to build some of the city's tallest and most iconic skyscrapers. Bamboo is definitely a flammable material. This is a very dry season in Hong Kong, so the likelihood of ignition of bamboo is quite high. Once it's ignited, the fire spreads and it would be super fast. The bamboo poles are also vertically oriented, so the fire is basically spreading up without any resistance. However, in March, the government had said it would phase out the use of bamboo owing to safety concerns. They highlighted the fact that at least 23 people have died since 2018 owing to industrial accidents involving bamboo scaffolds. The scale of the fire indicated that there were deficiencies in fire safety and the materials that were used. Besides the scaffolding, there was also debris which was inside, like newspapers and other flammable items. Once these items burn, the entire blaze would strengthen. Residents of the blazing Building also stated that they had complained of the green netting, but no one had paid heed to their complaints. Kwong Pui Loon, former chairman of Wong Fu Coat's Owners Corporation, was quoted as saying, "I always see construction workers smoking and they litter cigarette butts everywhere," hinting that this might have led to the fire. Meanwhile, Hong Kong police has arrested 3 construction officials on suspicion of manslaughter, 2 directors of a company and a consultant. Speaking on the arrest, Eileen Chung, a senior superintendent of police, was quoted as saying, "We have reason to believe that those in charge of the construction company were grossly negligent." The police added that they suspected some materials on the exterior walls of the high-rise buildings did not meet fire-resistant standards, as the rapid spread of fire was unusual. Officials also pointed out to the discovery of styrofoam being used inside the buildings, which they say caused the fire to spread more rapidly within the blocks and ignite flats through the corridors. The authorities added that they have opened temporary shelters at nearby community centers to house displaced residents. With the death toll already at 55, the fire at Wong Fu Coat is now being considered the worst ever in Hong Kong. Previously, in 1996, Garli building fire, in which 41 people died, was considered the worst blaze in Hong Kong history. Well, let's talk about this, and what does this really imply for skyscrapers and developed cities like Hong Kong as well? Mr. Dikshu Kukreja, town planner, is joining us on the broadcast to talk more about this. Mr. Kukreja, it's not only a problem for developing countries such as India. Building fires is a concern which developed cities also grapple with. I've been to Hong Kong a number of times. On the face of it, it looks pretty neat, it looks pretty organized, but obviously there are standards which are not met. What do you think transpired over here? And the loss of life which we have seen in this particular tragedy is unprecedented.
Hello, Vineet, and I must compliment you at least for raising a very pertinent subject. The images of the Hong Kong fire are certainly devastating, but what makes me shudder is to imagine that our own Indian cities, where we are very proudly going vertical in our construction and building high-rises, what's the state of our own safety out here? But before I address that, in response to your question, I think in the case of Hong Kong, what has happened and happens more even in developed cities, as you might recall, a couple of years back, there was this devastating fire we all witnessed in London in a high-rise, again, housing project. So these kind of things, unfortunately, when new buildings are designed, we all follow very stringent codes and statutory norms which are there. But what one tends to ignore later is how the building's upkeep is there, particularly related to firefighting, fire protection equipments. That's one aspect. And the second one, which tends to get ignored and has happened in the case of Hong Kong, is that when you are undertaking repairs of a building, you need to have safety precautions of all kinds in place, which obviously did not happen here, as you have just elaborated in your report. So it's equally important that when we have such safeguards built into our statutory norms and local authority practices, the building codes that are there, all these things are paid heed to during construction or during new construction. But after that, we tend to look the other way when it comes to regular upkeep or when it comes to these kind of major maintenance issues. And that has been the unfortunate cause I can see here what's happened in Hong Kong.
Mr. Kukreja, this question may be a little out of context, but being in India, living in a country which is still developing, it sends, shivers down my spine to imagine what kind of precautions do construction companies take in our country. If this can happen in Hong Kong, I shudder to imagine what's going on in some of the developing parts around the world, including our own.
Well, I shudder at it too, and I don't think I think it's a very pertinent point you're raising, Vineet. If we don't learn from mistakes or accidents which happen anywhere in the world, then I think we are being very foolish. And in the case of India, it is very, very concerning for me as well. And here I am the architect of the tallest building of Delhi, which is under construction. So of course we understand what high rises are, but are we responsible enough to maintain them, their upkeep? And that's where the problem lies. we are talking about going vertical across cities. Of course, we had heard of Mumbai turning into our own Shanghai 20 years ago. That might not have happened in terms of infrastructure, but there have been a lot of private enterprise which has gone ahead and built high-rise buildings in Mumbai in the last 20 years and continue to do so. And now this is happening in other parts of the country as well, not just the big metropolitan cities, but even cities like Bhubaneswar and all, which are now easily building 40-storied buildings, much like what you are talking about, the Hong Kong images you are showing. So therefore, the concern that is there is that we are following the National Building Code, and in the chapter 4 of the National Building Code, it all addresses fire safety, and that's all wonderful. But like I said, when it comes to construction practices, we look the other way. Shortcuts are made. And when the authorities come for inspection, I'm sorry to say, but in our country, we continue to have corruption. The officers are never put to test later on. They are not answerable to anybody. And therefore, a building which might have all the norms in place will not get approval, while it will happen the other way with the other buildings. For what reasons? You should be able to understand from my comment. So this is something which is very, very important, that we need to be more answerable, responsible, and we should be taking people to task. Unless we start setting the right example, this will continue to happen. It will be in the news for a few days and then we forget about it. And this is a very serious problem where most of the buildings, and I'm sorry to say this to you, but even in our own central business district, Connaught Place, most of the buildings do not have the fire safety drills and practices and equipment which is required as of date. They might have had it 40, 50 years ago, but look, technology has changed. And if you visit those buildings, it's for you to see. And in the recent news articles in the last couple of weeks, you might have noticed buildings like the Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital, the Delhi Police Headquarters themselves, and many other buildings which fail the fire sanctions. So that's the other side of it. When new buildings are being made, why are they not adhering to the fire safety codes? Number one. Number two, when buildings are made, are regular inspections happening? And are regular corrupt-free inspections happening? That's the question we need to answer. And third, when buildings undergo renovation, are the safety practices, there are manuals for this, but are they implemented? So we need to look at this matter very holistically if we are talking about India becoming a Viksit Bharat.
Absolutely right, sir. Mr. Kukreja, I appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. And thank you for those important and insightful perspectives and responses. We'll take a short break on that note. We'll be right back.